Chapter 3 deals with how to create and access and modify lists, which is one of the data types in Python. And we are going to cover all of the introductory list information in this one video. And I will be skipping over the hands-on exercises because there are separate videos for each of those. So, what is a list? In Python, it is a built-in data type, and it stores multiple items under a single variable name. And the items that you store can have different data types. So what is unique about a list is that it is ordered, which means you can access the different items using subscripts. And the first item has a subscript of 0. It is changeable, which means that any of the elements can be changed by assigning a different value to that particular element. And because we are accessing the items in a list by subscripting, we can have duplicate values. Okay? Because the way we are accessing everything is not by value, but by subscript. So how do we create a list? In Python, the way you create a list is similar to how you would create an array in other languages. So you have your variable name, the equal sign, and then in brackets, you have the items that are in your list. So if the item is a string, you put it in quotes. If it is a number, you just key in the number. You can actually have a list as an item, kind of a list within a list, totally allows that. So basically, any of the data types can be an item within your list. You just need to have commas in between. There are two different ways of creating it. The most common, the standard method, is the one that I just described. You can also use the list constructor. This is not as standard, and you can see it requires additional typing. You still have your variable name and the equal sign, but then you have to use the list class constructor, and then inside double parentheses, you would have each item in your list. The end result would be the same. You would have a list. Okay, so there are two different ways of creating it. What technique are we going to use in class? We are going to use the standard, which is the variable name equals, and then in brackets, you will put your items. To access the data in the list, you can simply print the list. And when you do that, it just kind of spits back the list. So I've got a little example over here in an online editor. You can see that I created two different lists, and then I just printed the list variable names, and it kind of spit back what's in the list. So that's one way of accessing. What if you want to access a particular item? Then you have to subscript in. The first item has a subscript of 0. Okay, the second item would be 1, third item would be 2. And what's unique about Python is that you can actually use negative subscripts. And -1 represents the last item in your list. -2 is the second to the last item in the list. So if I copy this little example over here, if we were to access it like this, and actually I'll even change this example a little bit. We'll access the whole thing backwards. So we start at -1, and then we go to -2, -3, and -4. It is accessing the entire list, but it's starting at the end first. Okay? Versus if we just access everything in order. So if we wanted to start at the beginning, we would use a 0. And then we'd go with a subscript of 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so you can see that the first set of 4 is backwards because we are using the negative subscripts. And then the second list is accessing them from left to right, which is forwards, because we are using 0, 1, 2, and 3. Now, how can I use this in output, besides pulling in one element and printing that out? You can actually put elements in an FString, uh, or you can use the concatenator with them. So let's take a look at this one. So this is that same list of fruits, but now I have put it in an FString, which starts with an F, and you can see I've got double quotes, and then the text and uh, any kind of apostrophe or spaces that I want are inserted. And where I am pulling from my list, I have that in curly braces. So let me run that. And what doesn't it like? Yeah, that should be fine. Interesting. Huh. I know what the problem is with the online editor. It's using the wrong version of Python. So in Python 3.6 is where the F string was implemented. And you can see this is using 2.7. So that is why the F string isn't working. However, if I run this same one in VS Code, okay, you can see that it does work. Okay, so that's actually a really good example of why versions matter. So moving on. Talked about how to create lists and how to access elements within the list. And now we're going to talk about how to change items in a list, how to add to the list, and how to remove from the list. So to change an item, all you have to do is take the list with the subscript of the location that you want to change and set that equal to a new value. So this little example is showing our fruit list, and then we're printing out what is currently at subscript 3. We change the value, and then we're printing it out again. And even though the online editor should be able to handle this one, I'm going to go ahead and just run it in VS Code. Okay, so you can see that it was banana. We changed it to peach. So you can change anything by subscripting and assigning a new value. If you want to add to the end of the list, then you need to use the append method. So it's just whatever the name of the list is, dot append, and then in parentheses, you're going to give it your new item. Okay, and in this little example, we're adding a couple fruits onto the end, and then we are printing it out. So append adds to the end. But what if you want to add somewhere inside the list? That is where the insert method comes into play. So with the insert method, you give it the position where you want to add, and then you give it the item that you want to add. So we'll go ahead and play with this a little bit. And because it allows duplicate values, we're going to append and insert. Okay, so we have our original list that we're going to print out. We are going to insert at position 0, and then we're also going to insert at -2. So remember, this is -1, this is -2. Okay, and then we're going to add a couple to the end. So let's go ahead and run this. Okay, and we can see our original list. And then we can see that it did insert peach at 0. It inserted pear at -2, because if you remember from that initial list before we added to the end, we had banana and we had strawberry. So one thing that you should note is that it is inserting before. Okay, so we had -2, right? So this is -1, -2. It's going to put it before. If we wanted it in between, then we would have had to use -1. So let's run it again with a -1. And you'll notice that the position changed. Okay, so now we have banana, and then we have pear before strawberry. Okay, and then append always just adds to the end. Okay, so what it's doing with the insert, this is position -1. It is inserting before. That's what you need to remember. Removing items from the list. So there's a couple different commands that you can use to remove items. Delete is a command. It is not a method. And basically you just use the keyword del, and then you subscript into your list, indicating the location that you want to remove. So if we wanted to remove All we'd have to do is delete fruits and then whatever subscript we want to get rid of. And then you should notice what we had between pear and peach before was banana, and that is now gone. Pop is a method. So what is the difference between a command, a function, and a method? A method has the object before it with a dot. Okay, anytime you see that, you are dealing with a method. A function has parentheses and it may or may not have parameters. Okay, so a function has parentheses, it does not have an object in front, okay? Has parentheses, you may or may not have to send it information. And a command is just kind of executed by itself. Okay, so delete is a command and pop is a method. Okay, most of what we're dealing with are methods. However, when we get to sorting, there is a function that we can use, and I will point that out. So pop is a method that adds to the end, or removes from the end, excuse me, it removes from the end of the list. What's unique about pop is that if you wanted to store that removed value in a variable, it does let you do that. You cannot store the deleted value. If you try to do an assignment with the deleted value, and I will show you, it does give you an error. Okay, because it does not allow you to store anything that was removed using delete. However, if we use the pop method, it does let us store that removed item. We can just say this item was removed. And let's run that. Okay, so you can see the list, you can see that the item was removed, and then you can see the revised list. Now, in addition to removing the last item using pop, you can give pop a subscript and it will remove the item in the subscript location. So if we wanted to remove item 5 instead of the last item, we can give it a subscript of 5 and we can run it again. And then the item that is being removed is banana. Now, what if you don't know the subscript number, but you know the value that you want to remove? That is when you use the remove method. And the remove method does not let you store what you're removing, but since you know the value of the item, what you can do is set removed item equal to the value that you're removing, right? So if I wanted to get rid of banana, I can set removed item equal to banana, and then I can use that remove command. And instead of sending it the value, I can send it the variable that I'm storing the value in. So if I store banana in removed item, because that's the one I want to get rid of, I can use fruits.remove and I can send it that removed item variable. That way I have saved the item that is being removed. Okay, and you can kind of see down here that it's telling us that banana was removed, it's showing us the new list, and it ran without any errors. So we've talked about how to create lists, how to access the different items in the list, how to add to the lists, how to change items that are in a list, and how to remove items from a list. Next, we're going to talk about how to organize a list. And that really involves sorting. The sort method permanently changes the list and puts it into alphabetic order. And to illustrate this, we'll run this little example. In fact, I'm going to print this twice. I'll print it before the sort just to show you that the sort did permanently change it. Okay, so this is before the sort, and then this is the list after the sort. You can see that it did put it in alphabetic order. So the sort method makes a permanent change. We also have a sorted function. And the sorted function does a temporary sort. And since this is a function, there is no object in front of the name. Okay, it is just sorted, and then in parentheses, you are sending it the list. So if this is something that you wanted to print out, you would have to have sorted fruits in your print statement because the change is temporary. Okay, so we'll change this a little bit. We'll print it, then we'll print the sorted version. Okay, and then we'll print it again, and you will see that it is, the sort does not stick. Okay, it is not permanent. So we've got the original, then we did the print on the temporary sort, and then we printed that list again, and you can see that it's not sorted. It went back to the original order. So the sorted function does a temporary sort. The sort method is permanent. And another method called reverse also does a permanent sort. It just does it in reverse order. So we will try reverse. So we got our little list here, and we'll print it, the non-sorted version. And then let's reverse it, and we'll print it. In the reverse order. So here's our original, and then here's the reverse order. And you'll look at it, you're like, okay, well, that is not Z to A, right? All it does is it flip-flops the order. So it makes the last item in your list the first item. The second to the last item in the list becomes your second item. So it just kind of flip-flops the order. Well, what if you want it, sorted Z to A? Well, then what you need to do is before you do reverse, you do fruits dot sort. That gets it A to Z. And then you do fruits dot reverse, and that puts it in reverse alphabetic order. And then you can see down here, it truly is in reverse order this time. And that brings us to the length function. Because you can add and remove to the list, it doesn't have a fixed length. So anytime you want to know how long the list is, you can use the length function. And the length function is simply len followed by parentheses and the name of your list. So I'll put this in a little sentence. Let's see, I'm going to put the length right here. And we'll go ahead and run that. Okay, so it says I have 7 in my list. Okay, so anytime you want to know how many, you just use length. Now, what happens if you try to subscript into the list and you are beyond the bounds, right? Because this first item is 0 and I have 7. So the last item is going to be number 6. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. What if I try to print out subscript 7, which does not exist? Well, I'm going to get an error. Let's run that. Okay, and it's telling me I have an index error. The list index is out of range. That's actually an excellent message because it is out of range. I am beyond the end of the list. So if I go beyond the list with a positive number, I'm going to get this, but I'll also get it if I try, I believe, a negative. So let's try a negative 10. Okay, same error because pear, which is at the last item, is -1. Banana is -2. Then we've got -3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So basically, if I do -8 or anything that's lower, I'm going to be beyond the end and get the error. Okay, and that pretty much completes chapter 3. So very similar to array processing. Okay, the difference here is that in Python, it is called a list.